This man just lost everything overnight. His daughter was kidnapped and murdered. His wife couldn't accept the truth, so she did something stupid. The loss of 2 loved ones made Sojin extremely desperate. He also wanted to do the same as his wife. But Sojin suddenly regained his senses. He was determined to make the bad guys pay. So Sojin took out the recording of his conversation with the murderer and listened to it again. He hoped to find some clues from this recording. However, Sojin accidentally discovered something strange when he talked to a strange girl. That day, Sojin was very worried and wanted to find his daughter, but that girl kept calling him to ask him to return her phone. At that time, he thought she was a scammer, so he didn't care. But now, when he listened to the recording again, he discovered something unbelievable. Sojin heard a strange noise on the phone, so he tried to focus on listening again. It turned out to be the August 8th typhoon forecast TV. Sojin didn't understand what was going on, because the day the call happened was clearly September. Why was the August news on TV that day? 2 days ago, Sojin's daughter accidentally broke a wine glass. Sojin immediately pulled Dabin aside and scolded her. He warned his daughter that if she didn't behave, she would have to go home by herself. As a result, Dabin had actually gone missing before the dance ended. 24 hours after Dabin's disappearance, Sojin suddenly received a strange call. The person on the other end of the line only said one sentence: "The child is safe." Then he quickly hung up. So the investigation concluded that this was not a missing person case, but a kidnapping case. A group of people had been sitting in Sojin's villa. They had been waiting for an entire day, but they had not received a call from the kidnappers. Sojin and his wife were completely devastated. At exactly 10:33, the phone finally rang. A woman asked Sojin to return her phone for no reason, but he was worried about his daughter, so he didn't have time to waste. So Sojin immediately hung up. A minute later, the phone rang again. This time, it was the kidnappers, but they only left a sentence saying that his daughter would be home tomorrow. Then the kidnapper hurriedly hung up because the call was too short. The police couldn't pinpoint their exact location. However, what made everyone confused was that the kidnapper didn't mention the ransom at all. Sojin was worried, so he couldn't sit still. He picked up the phone and sent a series of messages to find his daughter. At this time, he happened to see the message from the woman. She still asked him to return the phone. Sojin didn't think much of it. He had to risk sending her a message to find someone. Just then, the doorbell suddenly rang. Everyone rushed out. The delivery man was so frightened that he ran away when he saw that there were too many people. Then he stepped on the gas pedal and drove away in the electric car. Everyone was stunned. Looking at the box, the atmosphere was strangely quiet. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't understand. The kidnappers had said that Dabin would come home today. But how could such a small box contain her? A bad premonition came to Sojin's mind. Sure enough, when the box was opened, inside was a bloody finger. Sojin's wife was completely devastated by this situation, because yesterday, she had put a cartoon-shaped bandage on her daughter's hand. After the police performed a DNA test, they confirmed that the finger belonged to Dabin. What was even more heartbreaking was that the finger had lost its vital signs. That meant it had been cut off after Dabin had died. When Sojin and his wife heard this news, they were devastated. His wife, Hun-chae, fainted on the spot. But what was even more surprising was that in the evening, Sojin received a text message from his wife. Hun-chae could not bear the pain of losing her child, so she climbed up the bridge and jumped off. Because the river water was too strong, her body was not found. In just 48 short hours, Sojin lost his child and then his wife. He completely doubted his life. He was sure that he had offended someone in his previous life, so Sojin went to the place where his wife had jumped off and slowly climbed up the bridge. It was now 10:33 on September 10th. Sojin's phone suddenly received a text message. He curiously took it out to check. Unexpectedly, the message was still from that woman. Sojin was about to put the phone away when a new message came in. This time, the woman said that she had seen Sojin's daughter. This made Sojin wake up. He realized that the kidnappers had not been caught yet, so he couldn't die so easily. So Sojin called the woman. He made an appointment to meet her tomorrow to discuss the details. At that moment, something strange happened. Behind him, a bus carrying death row inmates passed by. The woman sitting in the car was the one talking to Sojin. The next day, the two went to meet as scheduled. But when looking closely, the surrounding space had a different color. The warm pink space belonged to Ari, while the cold gray space belonged to Sojin. The two sat across from each other but couldn't see each other. Ari wanted her phone back, while Sojin wanted information about his missing daughter. Ari kept calling, but she couldn't connect. 3 days after Sojin lost both his wife and child, he texted Ari. Sojin thought his life was tragic enough, and Ari still broke her promise and teased him. The two sat at the same table, but they waited for each other for 3 hours. In the end, they both thought they had encountered an online airline scam, so they decided to leave in frustration. Eri rushed to the hospital but found that her mother had disappeared. Erin worriedly searched everywhere all day, but there was no news of her mother. At 10:33 that night, Eri suddenly received a text message from Sojin during the day. He asked why she didn't keep her appointment. Eri, who was already upset, became even more furious. She had clearly waited for 3 hours, but Sojin said that she had broken the appointment. Eri had lost her mother, and Sojin had just lost both his wife and child, so the two of them lost control and argued. Eri angrily said that if she had known that Sojin was a scammer, she wouldn't have helped him post a wanted poster in front of the cafe. What was even more infuriating was that Sojin had also written the date of her daughter's tough force disappearance wrong. Luckily, Eri had changed it from August to August. It served him right that he couldn't find his daughter. Sojin was immediately annoyed after hearing this. He asked again who the scammer was. After that, the two of them hung up in a disagreement. The next day, Sojin received a notice from the police station. They said they had found the delivery person. However, through technical examination, the delivery person was not the kidnappers. The police also announced that, although they had not found Da Bin's body, they could basically confirm that the girl had no chance of survival. When Sojin heard this news, he felt like he was back in the ruins of his nightmare. No matter how much he screamed, it was useless. Sojin took out his phone and listened to the recording of the conversation with the kidnappers that day. He finds out during his call with Eri that the TV is showing the news on August 8th. Sojin hurriedly ran to the cafe's bulletin board to check. He wanted to see if he could find the notice Eri had mentioned. The entire wall was covered with papers, but there was no missing person notice. As Sojin was about to leave, a gust of wind blew the paper off the top. The yellowed missing person notice was revealed. To his surprise, the actual date of disappearance had been changed from September to August. This completely changed Sojin's worldview. It turned out that what Eri said was true. At that moment, a bold idea flashed through his mind. He quickly picked up the phone and made a call. It was a call that crossed time. On August 13th, Eri received a call from Sojin, who was on September 13th. Sojin immediately asked what day it was. Was Eri living in August? But she scolded him for being crazy. Did he call just to ask about this? Then, Eri also irritably replied that today is of course August 13th. Only then did Sojin confirm that the time he was in was September 13th. This meant that the time he was living in was 1 month later than hers. Now, if Eri would only help, Sojin could save his wife and child. But Eri said that she was not stupid. Obviously, what Sojin said was too unreasonable for her to believe and help him. This was Sojin's only hope to save his wife and child, so he decided not to give up and called Eri back. He knew that the time behind was very important. By the 34th minute, the phone was completely disconnected. Even so, Sojin still had to find a way to make Eri believe him, so he came up with a strange plan. Sojin sent Eri the winning lottery numbers for August 15th. Eri had a friend named Gun Yuka. He lied that he could use locating technology to find her mother, but she needed to provide her personal information and bank book. Because Eri was so eager to find her mother, she believed it immediately. It was only when she received a message from the bank to withdraw money that she realized she had been scammed. Now, Eri not only lost her mother, but also her money. In the middle of the heavy rain, she cried out. At this time, Eri happened to see the lottery information on the door. She suddenly remembered the message she had received. When Eri compared the numbers, she found them to be exactly the same. This completely stunned her. That night, Eri proactively contacted Sojin. Eri said that if Sojin helped her find Gunyu to get her money back, she would believe everything he said. The next day, Sojin asked Police Park to investigate Gunyuke's whereabouts. But Sojin suddenly received shocking news that in September, Eri was being held for murdering Gunyuk. In prison, Sojin met Eri. It turned out that on the evening of August 17th, according to the address Sojin provided, Eri had come to Gunyuka. As soon as they met, they wanted to fight. Gunyuke secretly picked up a brick while Eri pulled out the knife she had prepared. The usual scenario was that Gunyuke used the brick to attack. Eri accidentally caused Gunyuk's death. However, the night before, Sojin called Eri and told her everything. This gave her a chance to choose again. This time, Eri decided to throw away the knife in her hand. The next day, Sojin returned to the prison and there was no information about Eri. This meant that her fate had really changed. That night, the two talked again. Sojin informed Eri that they could contact each other from 10:33 to 10:34 every night, so he would send the necessary items via text message. The first thing Eri did was meet Sojin in August. She thought everything would go smoothly, but a man with a sore leg ran into the police station and shouted that he was the one who killed Da Bin. What was more surprising was that he also falsely accused Sojin of killing his child. This made the police confused. Could there be another criminal? Police Park quickly called Sojin. When Sojin met the kidnapper of his daughter, he could not contain his anger. He was about to rush forward to kill the kidnapper. However, Jinho was extremely calm. Jinho told Sojin that you did not know me, but I understood you very well. They were all murderers and had both lost their children. Sojin was extremely surprised when he heard that. After Sojin thought carefully, he realized that Jinho was the one who often held the protest banner. Under the company, Jinho's daughter died in the fire at the amusement park. It was a project that Sojin was in charge of. Jinho kept insisting that Sojin used poor quality materials and caused the fire. While all the materials of the project had been inspected by Sojin, there was no way they could be of poor quality. This incident also caused Sojin to be severely scolded by the chairman. Only now did Sojin remember the existence of Jinho. Sojin did not expect that the culprit was Jinho, but losing his daughter made Sojin extremely painful. The matter had come to this point. Sojin had no choice but to calm down. Sojin's next question was very delicate. Sojin asked when he should meet Jinho to prevent this tragedy. Jinho angrily said that at this time, Sojin was still talking about these things. When Jinho was holding a protest banner in front of the company building, why didn't Sojin come to see him? Sojin's next question was even more professional. Sojin asked what Jinho did a month ago, when, where, how did Jinho kidnap Sojin's daughter? This series of questions made Police Park think that Sojin was the police, so he told Sojin to go home and rest. Then, Police Park chased him away. Since Sojin couldn't find out anything, he decided to investigate on his own. Sojin went to the company to review the material report from many years ago. At this time, Secretary Jang entered. Since Secretary Jang was Sojin's only confidant, Sojin told him the information about the murderer. Secretary Jang said that he would not betray Sojin's trust. He would take on the task of tracing Jinho's activities in the previous month. The clock struck 10:33, and the time-traveling call was connected again. Sojin immediately gave Eri two tasks. The first task was for her to grasp Jinho's activities in August. The second task was for Eri to convince Sojin in August. The first task was easy to handle because Jinho in August had not committed any crime. Eri could directly meet him. However, the second task was extremely difficult for Eri. Just getting into Sojin's company was a problem. It turned out that Eri had come to Sojin's company this morning. Anyone without an access card couldn't get in. Furthermore, even if Eri could get in, it would be difficult for her to convince August Sojin that Eri could predict the future and that his daughter would be kidnapped and murdered. However, Sojin made a condition that Eri couldn't refuse. He would help her find her mother. When Eri opened the information about the murderer that Sojin sent, she was completely surprised. She didn't expect the murderer to be him, so a complicated deal was made. Sojin would help Eri find traces of her mother's activities in September, and Eri had to convince August Sojin to prevent his daughter from being kidnapped. When Gunyuke learned that Eri was worried about how to get into the office building where Sojin worked, he came up with an idea. Gunyuke asked a technician to make a fake access card for Eri. The next morning, Eri smoothly entered the company and met Sojin at this time. Eri seriously told him that in a few weeks, his daughter would not only be kidnapped, his daughter would also be murdered right where his wife performed. The culprit was Jinho, who always protested under this building. What was more terrible was that Sojin's wife did something stupid because she lost her child. Eri also said that the reason she knew all of this was because she had contacted Sojin in September. As expected, when Sojin heard this, he immediately said that he should call the police or send Eri to a mental hospital. Immediately after that, Eri was chased out by the security guard. The time returned to September. The kidnapping case was suddenly leaked, and the media began to report it everywhere. Every article was aimed at the construction company where Sojin worked. In order to minimize the impact on the company, the president directly suspended Sojin from work. However, it was thanks to the news that Jinho revealed Dobbin's last known location. The entire police force worked all day. They found clues at night, but the police only found Dobbin's clothes, toys, and a photo. In August, Eri went to the hospital where her mother was treated again. The nurse gave Eri a very important piece of information. On the day her mother went missing, someone saw a suspicious man enter her mother's hospital room. Eri hurriedly ran to the surveillance room to review the image. A limping man appeared in the frame. Looking closely, it was indeed Jinho. At 10:33 that night, the call was reconnected. Eri told Sojin that Jinho was also at the hospital on the day her mother went missing. As long as Sojin could find Jinho, he might be able to find clues about her mother. Since Jinho hadn't committed any crime in August, Eri told him that she would go to Jinho's house tomorrow to inquire about the situation. Time went back to September. Sojin went to the police station to get his daughter's belongings. belongings back. Sojin also asked how Jinho would be handled. Police officer Park replied that it might take a while because Jinho was involved in a murder case, and the victim of this case was Ari. Moreover, the time of the crime happened exactly 1 month ago. Today, Sojin felt dizzy after hearing that, because last night Ari said that today she would go find Jinho to ask about her mother's whereabouts. If Ari was murdered, then fate would no longer be able to be changed. Sojin hurriedly ran to Jinho's house. The police tape on the door made him scared. Sojin kept calling, but he couldn't connect. At this moment, Ari was walking step by step towards the crime scene. Meanwhile, Sojin was looking at his daughter's relics and recalling the past. Dabin was a very understanding girl. When she had itchy rashes all over her body and was extremely uncomfortable, she did not complain. But now Sojin scolded his daughter for being uncomfortable and not saying anything. Dabin asked Sojin if her parents were arguing because of her. Sojin turned to look at Dabin, who was trying to hold back her tears. She said that she just did not want to see her parents arguing because of her. It turned out that every time Sojin and his wife argued, Dabin heard it and hugged the doll, wondering if her daughter was naughty and her parents were arguing. Every time Sojin thought about his good daughter being murdered, he felt extremely regretful because he had not had time to explain to his daughter that the two of them were not really arguing because of her. Sojin suddenly realized that he could no longer continue to be immersed in the past because Ari was going to be murdered tonight, and Ari was Dabin's last hope. On the evening of September 24, Sojin ripped off the tape on Jinho's door and opened the door to enter the messy house. It wasn't until Sojin saw the blood stains on the wall and the chalk marks marking the crime scene that he was certain that Ari would definitely be murdered tonight. At this moment, a knock suddenly sounded on the door. Ari from August 24 knocked on Jinho's door. When she saw the leather shoes at the door, she tried to peek inside. Ari didn't know that a mysterious person was hiding behind the wall. Because Jinho felt that he was about to be exposed, he pulled Ari into the room. Strangely, Sojin also imagined Ari's fate. Jinho picked up the hammer. When Sojin thought that Ari was definitely going to die, the next second a strange scene appeared. The blood stains on the floor gradually disappeared. The layout of the room also began to change. Then the kitchen became even stranger. The hammer that Jinho was holding also returned to its original position. What was going on? It turned out that Gun Yuke had come to save Ari in time. The mysterious person chased them relentlessly. When they reached an alley, Gun Yuke picked up a flower pot on the side of the road and threw it at the mysterious person. The flower pot hit him right in the face. From then on, the mysterious person also revealed himself. This person was Sojin's driver. So why did Gun Yuke appear at such a timely time? It turned out that Ari had left her phone at the store, so Gun Yuke intended to bring it back to her. At exactly 10:33, Ari's phone started ringing continuously. It was a text message from Sojin. In it, Sojin announced that Ari would die tonight at Jinho's house. Gun Yuke panicked and rushed over. The ceiling tape on the floor also mysteriously disappeared. This made Sojin confused and didn't understand what was going on. To determine whether Ari was dead or not, Sojin quickly returned to his car and called police officer Park. Sojin asked about his mother's case that happened on August 24th in Shinhun Ward. However, the case that day had changed. Everyone's memories of Ari's case had also completely disappeared. Police officer Park naturally confirmed that there was no case involving the victim, Ari. He asked Sojin if he was mistaken. However, there was actually a case with the victim Ari, but it didn't happen on the 24th, but on the 25th. The location of the crime had also changed. Sojin was completely confused and wanted to ask more, but police officer Park didn't want to say more and hung up. Sojin quickly took out his phone to look up the information. Sure enough, there was a case involving a female corpse in Ruksam Ward. Sojin immediately texted Ari that her time of death had been postponed by 1 day. Ari would be killed again tomorrow. At this moment, Ari suddenly remembered her past as a child. Her father passed away when she was only 5 years old. When Ari saw her mother crying quietly in the corner of the room, she could only close the door and quietly leave. Every time Ari missed her father, she only dared to secretly pick up the phone and call her father's old number. After Ari's mother got heart disease, whether it was happy or sad, she would call and leave a message on her father's number. For example, to inform her father that she graduated today. Even though Ari's father had been gone for a long time, she still pretended to call her father to comfort herself. When the phone number that Ari had called thousands of times suddenly answered, she felt that helping Sojin was also helping herself. When Ari met Sojin again in August, she said that regardless of whether the fake documents existed or not, Jinho still thought that his child died because of Sojin, so he was planning to kidnap kidnap Da Bin. Now Sojin had no more time. Sojin needed to meet Jinho immediately to prevent this tragedy, but Sojin only asked Eri if she had finished speaking. Sojin also asked if Jinho was a stubborn man. Eri saw that Sojin could not believe her, so she thought that maybe his wife would listen. So Eri went to Sojin's villa to find his wife. At that moment, Hunche got into a taxi. Eri immediately chased Hunche to an apartment. When Eri was about to call Hunche, she suddenly witnessed a shocking scene. A handsome man opened the door to welcome Hunche. Then the two hugged and entered the apartment. That man was Secretary Jang. However, Sojin was not only betrayed by his wife, but he was also summoned by the police because he was suspected of falsifying construction material inspection documents. Due to the lack of a test report from the competent authority, Sojin was at risk of being prosecuted and imprisoned. Fortunately, Eri's advice worked. It helped change the truth. Sojin in August was worried that there was a problem with the documents, so he hurried back to the company to check. He found some loopholes. Sojin immediately redid the inspection procedure, but he couldn't remember where the new certificate was. So Sojin called Secretary Jang to go home and look for it. Sadly, Secretary Jang said he couldn't find the new documents. When the prosecutor's office returned the phone to Sojin, Secretary Jang snatched it away. Meanwhile, Eri had arrived at the apartment door. Just as she was about to ring the doorbell, the clock struck 10:33. The phone rang with a message notification. It turned out to be the warning Sojin had sent last night. He informed her that Eri's death had been postponed for another day. Tomorrow, she will be killed at apartment 609. Ruksam Ward. Eri looked up suspiciously. The room in front of her is number 609. Sojin also texted that Eri absolutely cannot enter apartment 609. Otherwise she will die here tonight. Eri panicked and immediately called Sojin, but Sojin's phone was in Secretary Jang's hand. Sojin rushed forward to snatch the phone back, but Secretary Jang shamelessly hung up right in front of Sojin. Meanwhile, Secretary Jang was in the apartment and noticed the movement outside. Sojin was worried and wanted to tell Eri to run away, so he rushed forward to snatch the phone. Secretary Jang had already reached the iron door. Sojin grabbed the phone at 10:34, but the call could not be connected. Secretary Jang pushed the door open with all his might. Fortunately, Eri ran into the elevator in time. August Sojin finally took action. In the middle of the night, he requested the competent authority to urgently send the inspection certificate. Fortunately, the document was sent back in time. Once again, history changed. A shocking scene immediately appeared. A new certificate appeared in the pile of files. Thanks to that, Sojin was cleared of the crime of forging documents. Sojin from September until now only knew that Secretary Jang had forged documents to harm him. However, Sojin did not expect that Hunche also had an affair with Secretary Jang. At this time, because the light was too dim and Secretary Jang had taken off her glasses, Eri only knew that Hunche had betrayed Sojin, but she did not know that Secretary Jang had a problem. In September, Sojin rushed to the apartment in Ruksam Ward. He found that there was no one inside. Sojin immediately looked for the management and pretended that his car was scratched by a resident of apartment 609. He did so to get the phone number of the landlord. When Sojin entered the number into his phone, he found out that it was his driver. The driver became the scapegoat. At this time, Sojin confirmed that the person who wanted to kill Eri was his driver. But Sojin was completely unaware that the real mastermind was Secretary Jang. Secretary Jang completely became the winner. He even intended to take all of Sojin's assets and emigrate abroad. At 10:33 p.m., Sojin received a text message from Eri. It contained a video that Gun UK had taken near Hunche's house. When Sojin opened the video, he saw that the person in the video was also the driver. So Sojin told Eri that the person who had chased and killed her twice was his driver. The next day, Sojin made a plan. He pretended to take the company car for maintenance. He asked the driver to drive him to a certain place. After arriving at the place, Sojin sent the driver away and installed a tracking device under the car. That same night, the phone signaled that the car was on the highway. Sojin was curious and drove after it. When he arrived at an abandoned warehouse, the signal suddenly disappeared. Sojin recklessly walked into the darkness. When he arrived at an abandoned greenhouse, he was so scared that he fell to the ground. Sojin raised his head and saw a hanging body. That person was Eri's mother. When Sojin saw that terrifying scene, he gasped so hard that he felt like he had lost half his soul. At that moment, his phone rang. Eri asked Sojin how he had looked up the driver's information, but he didn't have time to talk about this. Sojin immediately told her about following the driver and discovering the body. After listening, Eri was also startled. In such a dangerous situation, he didn't even run away. Sojin used the phone's flashlight to quickly take a few pictures. He was indeed very brave. Then Sojin approached the body. He took took out a few pieces of paper from the victim's pocket. Sojin intended to use the phone to call the police, but he thought again. If Sojin appeared in the middle of the night in a deserted place like this, he would definitely be suspected. So Sojin went to a public phone booth. He didn't forget to wrap the receiver in a handkerchief and call the police. However, Sojin didn't know that his every move was being watched by someone. Sojin followed the location on the GPS and chased to the bus station. He discovered that the GPS device was attached to the back of a passenger bus. The circuit was broken. When Sojin got home, he took out the piece of paper and found that it was a bank transfer receipt. There was also an account number written on it. Thanks to Sojin's acquaintance, who was the bank manager, he was able to find the account holder's phone number. When Sojin called that number, an old man was on the other end. Sojin asked who had transferred the money to him 2 days ago. The old man told him Ari's mother's name. This information surprised Sojin greatly. He quickly pulled the car to the side of the road. Sojin took out his phone and opened the photo Ari had sent. He then compared it with the photo of the body he had taken last night. Sojin did not expect that the driver would dare to kill Ari's mother. Sojin did not know how to explain. Just then, Ari's phone received a text message. Her mother's bank account had just received 100 million won. Rai had never seen such a large amount of money before, so she rushed to the bank to ask who had transferred the money. But the bank refused to provide information because Ari was not the account holder. Luckily, Gun UK had a friend who worked at the bank, so he was able to look up information about the person who had transferred the money. That person was Sojin's driver. At 10:33 p.m., the time-traveling call was connected again. Ari asked if her mother was okay. Sojin didn't know what to say at this time. He couldn't say outright that her mother was dead. Sojin had no choice but to tell Ari to listen carefully. Right now, he could only look up her mother's whereabouts after September 14th, but she had to find her mother before September 26th. After listening, Ari began to have doubts. Why did she have to find her mother before September 26th? What would happen if she couldn't find her mother? Sure enough, Ari had guessed the truth. Her mother had been murdered. Ari painfully wrote down the addresses her mother had visited after September 14th. The bigger shock came the next day. Sojin suddenly received a call from Police Park, informing him that his daughter's killer had done something foolish. It turned out that Secretary John had found Jinho before. He said that Jinho's life was too tragic. Jinho's eldest daughter had burned to death in the park, and his youngest daughter had a serious lung disease and was bedridden. If Jinho didn't want her to become disabled, he would kill someone on Secretary Jang's orders. Then, Jinho's youngest daughter would get a lung transplant. In prison, Jinho felt extremely remorseful, so he called Sojin. Jinho made an appointment to meet Sojin the next morning to reveal the mastermind. However, the next morning, Sojin received news from Police Park that Jinho had done something foolish. Right after Sojin hung up, he received a call from the restaurant owner. This person had seen Sojin looking for a woman a few days ago. Today, the owner suddenly remembered that she had come to the shop. She said she had taken a bus here. The departure point might have clues. According to the owner, Sojin had gone to a motel near the bus station. Sojin then learned that Ari's mother had stayed in room 305 for a month. As soon as Sojin entered that room, he received a call from Police Park. He asked Sojin what he had done on the night of September 26th. Sojin immediately felt uneasy. Through the obvious strangulation marks on Ari's mother's body, the forensics determined that the victim had not done anything foolish. What was even more surprising was that a special tie clip was found in the victim's mouth. It was a souvenir from the construction company where Sojin worked. Sojin's name was engraved on it. What Sojin could not explain was that his phone signal appeared right at the scene of the crime. Sojin was really panicked when he heard this. He suddenly remembered that on that very day, the tie clip had fallen in the driver's car. Police Park had asked Sojin to surrender. However, if Sojin was arrested right now, he would not be able to save his daughter. When the police surrounded the motel, Sojin was cornered. He was forced to climb up to the third-floor balcony and recklessly jump down, but his leg was seriously injured. In the end, Sojin still could not escape the fate of being arrested, but a strange thing happened right after that. Everyone gradually disappeared. It turned out that in the past, there had been a shocking building collapse. When Sojin had just run into the bathroom, the wall next to it began to crack. The whole building shook violently. Before the unprecedented scene, everyone panicked and ran away. But the tragedy still happened. 2 buildings collapsed in the blink of an eye. Only Sojin was trapped in the bathroom, plunged into darkness. He went hungry and thirsty for 31 days. After that, he was rescued and became the last survivor. Ari is now exactly like Sojin 19 years ago. She is going through the darkest days of her life, but it will all end. Ari wiped her tears and texted Sojin, "When the darkness passes, we will meet again." again. After Eri finished cleaning her room, she texted her friend that she wanted to find her mother. The three of them quickly went to the restaurant that Sojin mentioned. A miracle happened. They met Eri's mother walking towards them. History immediately changed. All traces related to Eri's mother's death disappeared. At this time, Sojin was sure that the person who saved him was Eri. To confirm whether Eri's mother was safe or not, Sojin went to the police station. Police officer Park said that he did not know anyone like Eri's mother. Sojin breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that. He finally felt relieved. As history had changed, so had the driver's memories. This meant that the GPS device that Sojin had placed in the car had not been detected. When Sojin reviewed the GPS data, he discovered that the driver had been at the hospital on the day Jinho committed his crime. This could not have been a coincidence. So, Sojin immediately went to the hospital. According to the traces at the scene, the place where Jinho jumped was the roof of the hospital. However, Jinho had a sore leg and was handcuffed, so he could not have climbed over such a high railing by himself. The news said that he jumped off the building at 10 o'clock a.m. Meanwhile, the driver had been at the hospital from 9:34 a.m. to 10:09 a.m. This showed that the driver was the one who killed Jinho. The next day, Eri's mother asked Eri to go visit her father. On the way, her mother told her to go buy flowers. When she returned, there was only a piece of paper left on the chair. The paper said that Eri should not look for her mother anymore. Only then could both of them live. Although Eri didn't understand why, she knew something was wrong with her mother. She was afraid that her mother would be harmed by the driver again. Eri panicked and went to Gun UK. She received an 80,000-volt stun gun from him. Eri then followed the driver's car. She followed him to an alley and pulled out her weapon. At this time, Hunche's childhood past was also revealed. Hunche pushed the door open and saw a bottle of alcohol on the floor. She accidentally threw her shirt on it. Unexpectedly, Hunche set fire to the newspaper. Then she held an iron bar to block the door. It turned out that Hunche couldn't stand her alcoholic father. She thought the fire would end everything. Unexpectedly, after 20 years, a scarred old man came to her. Hunche immediately recognized this as the father she thought had died in the fire years ago. Immediately after, Hunche received a text message asking her to prepare 10 billion won. Otherwise, they would both die. So Hunche quickly prepared an escape plan. In the morgue, Hunche found a body the same age as her daughter and stole a hair sample. Then she looked for the blind spot of the camera on the bridge. From Hunche's position to Secretary John's, there was a voice message for Sojin everywhere. Hunche just had to make Sojin believe that she had done something stupid and her plan would be successful. All that was left was to wait until the dinner party 3 days later. At this time, Eri's mother went missing again. She suddenly realized that there were only 2 ways to save her mother: kill the driver or prevent Jinho from kidnapping Dabin. Because both Eri's mother and Jinho were murdered by the driver, this proved that the fates of Eri's mother and Dabin were intertwined. However, killing the driver was too difficult, so they had no choice but to prevent Dabin's kidnapping. After Eri contacted Dabin, Eri discovered that she always held a teddy bear. So Eri bought an identical teddy bear, but it had a GPS device attached to it. Eri secretly went to the kindergarten to exchange Dabin's toy. That night, Sojin turned on his phone and was surprised to see the GPS signal. However, Eri had exchanged the teddy bear in August. While it was now September, that meant a month had passed. A few days ago, the police found Dabin's teddy bear by the river. So could the current GPS signal be Eri's? Sojin hurried to the police station to retrieve Dabin's belongings, but he didn't see the GPS device inside. This proved that the location shown on the phone was where the teddy bear was. The teddy bear was still intact. Could it be that Dabin was still alive? Sojin drove all night and followed the GPS information to the location. The next day, Sojin found a resort 500 kilometers away from the city and slowly approached the villa. Here, Sojin heard the familiar melody again, the song his wife used to play. The next scene shocked Sojin. His good daughter and good wife were both there. He thought this would be a happy reunion, but unexpectedly, his daughter ran towards Secretary Jang. This scene completely stunned Sojin. At that moment, the driver appeared and hit him from behind. Hunche was so cruel that she ignored her husband being beaten. What was even more infuriating was that the driver bent down to check if Sojin was breathing, but when the driver saw that Sojin was still alive, he continued to hit him again. Sojin in September had closed his eyes. Hunche coldly asked Sojin if he was not dead. Secretary Jang still had a conscience and suggested taking Sojin to the hospital, but Hunche said that she hated uncertainty, so she had to kill Sojin immediately. Hunche then tried to do it himself, but Secretary Jang stopped him and said that he would kill Sojin another time. After the two left, Sojin opened her eyes. It turned out that Sojin had faked his death. Sojin's tears flowed with indignation, but at least Sojin knew that this was a plot by his wife and secretary Jang. Sojin thought to himself that now he could only rely on Ari. Ari had not been able to contact Sojin for 3 days, so she was sure that something had happened to him. Time waits for no one. Today is September 5th. Tomorrow is the day Da-bin will be kidnapped. So Ari decided to act alone. The next day, Ari went to Sojin's villa to post a notice for her missing person. Gunyuk, Ari, and Suchung assigned tasks. Gunyuk would follow Jinho. Ari would watch Da-bin. Suchung would pretend to be a dispatcher. At 6 o'clock that night, Jinho got in a taxi. Gunyuk followed him on a motorbike. History repeated itself when Da-bin broke the glass. As soon as Sojin finished scolding Da-bin, Secretary Jang ran over to comfort Da-bin, saying that there was a very big doll downstairs. If she gets bored, she can go down and play with her. When the party started, Hun-chae used the sound of the violin as a signal. She ordered the driver to act. At this time, Jinho also arrived at the hotel and went to the stairwell. Secretary Jang in October couldn't sit still. He held the syringe and was about to inject Sojin. When Ari in September called out, Da-bin finally turned around. Secretary Jang in October saw his body disappearing. At this time, he fell into a state of confusion. In September, the police rushed in and immediately arrested Ari. It turned out that Sojin had already planned it. No matter how Ari explained, the arrogant Sojin only believed in his own judgment. The wanted poster was posted on the door, along with what Ari had said about someone kidnapping Da-bin, so Sojin couldn't help but be on guard. Unless Ari was a mental patient, the kidnapper was her. Ari had said that she had evidence of texting with Sojin, but the police discovered that Sojin's phone number had only been changed on September 5th. This meant that Sojin's phone number had only been activated 1 day earlier. Of course, there was no text history on Sojin's phone. What was even more difficult to explain was that a month ago, this phone number belonged to Ari, so now, Ari had really become a mental patient. Secretary Jang a sip of wine to calm himself down. Fortunately, he had caught Ari this time. Otherwise, Sojin would have discovered the real kidnapping plan. But the more the driver thought about it, the stranger it became. Why did Ari come to the exact location at that exact time? It seemed like she could have known about the plan in advance. The next day, Secretary Jang went to find an insider in the police station. He got Ari's text message history. When Secretary Jang saw the text message content, he was really shocked. The content of the message was exactly as he had planned. The message even mentioned apartment number 609, where Secretary Jang lived. Suddenly, Secretary Jang remembered that on the night of August 24th, the driver had texted that the location of the apartment seemed to have been leaked. When Secretary Jang checked the message history, he was surprised to see that everything matched perfectly. The message even informed that Ari had placed a GPS device on Da-bin's teddy bear. When Secretary Jang entered the account and password in the message, he actually logged in successfully. The GPS location was Sojin's house. Hun-chae originally did not believe in such strange things. Unexpectedly, when she opened the teddy bear to see, she actually discovered a GPS device inside. At this moment, Hun-chae was completely stunned. September Ari also felt helpless. No matter how she tried to explain, Sojin still did not believe her. Even the police thought that Ari was a mental patient. At first, Ari only thought that if she prevented Da-bin from being kidnapped, Sojin in October would be fine. Ari just needed to let him explain, but she still couldn't call Sojin in October. If there were too many coincidences, it definitely wasn't a coincidence. So Secretary Jang ran to the hospital to find Jinho, but he didn't expect to receive shocking news. Jinho said that Ari was Songja's daughter. Songja was the person the driver had been looking for. At this time, Secretary Jang felt suspicious because he had never heard the driver mention this person. Secretary Jang didn't expect the driver to dare to hide this matter. From here, Secretary Jang's group of 3 people began to crack. At the crucial moment, Songja appeared. Songja went to the construction company's president because President Ju spoke up. Sojin in September was forced to withdraw the lawsuit. Thanks to that, Ari was released. As soon as she left the gate, she received a call from Sojin in October. When she was arrested, he went missing. Now that she was released, he came looking for her. So Ari declared that she would never trust him again. Unexpectedly, a distress call rang out on the other end of the line. It turned out that Sojin was driving in October when he suddenly got into an accident. He was rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Hun-chae and Da-bin died on the spot. Based on the skid marks on the tire on the road, the police were able to determine that this was an accident caused by a deliberate hit. When Secretary Jang met Hun-chae again, she had become a cold corpse. Secretary Jang could not believe that the person lying there was the woman he had always protected. Originally, the two of them planned to go abroad together after dealing with Sojin, but the the ending was so hard to accept. The cause of the tragedy stemmed from Hun-chae discovering a secret of Sojin. Sojin in September saw his wife's clothes in the closet and suddenly heard strange befall. Hallucinating sounds, the altered memories of the past appeared clearly in his mind, but Sojin still thought it was just an illusion, so he quickly took some sedatives. However, this scene was seen by Hun-chae. Out of curiosity, Hun-chae looked for Sojin's medical records in the study. At this time, she discovered that he suffered from severe post-traumatic anxiety disorder. It turned out that 19 years ago, Sojin had just finished his college entrance exam and followed his father to the construction site. Unexpectedly, he encountered a building collapse. That incident killed 71 people and injured countless others. 20 days after the accident, everyone thought Sojin was buried alive. He would have no hope of survival, but no one expected that after 31 days of being buried, he would still be alive. However, fate was still too cruel. Just when Sojin had just escaped death, he received sad news. Because his father could not bear the pain of losing him, his father did something foolish 3 days before he was rescued. From then on, Sojin started to have headaches. 19 years later, the project was restarted, and the chairman assigned the task of rebuilding to Sojin. Right at the groundbreaking press conference, the scarred man met Hun-chae and threatened that if she did not give him money within a week, he would expose all the evil deeds she had done. Hun-chae was forced to restart the plan to kill Sojin. However, Secretary Jang informed him that the previous plan to kidnap Da-bin could no longer be carried out, because in September, Sojin met Jinho. Sojin not only apologized to Jinho, but also helped treat his daughter's lung disease. Therefore, Jinho decided to quit his job halfway. At this time, Hun-chae realized that relying on others was not as good as doing it herself, so she secretly planned behind Secretary Jang's back. It's when Secretary Jang entered the hospital room in October, he saw that Sojin had been in a coma for 3 days. Secretary Jang thought that Hun-chae was dead and criticized why Sojin was still alive. Then Secretary Jang put his hand on the oxygen valve and wanted to cut off Sojin's life, but Secretary Jang had to know the truth, so he let go. Then, Secretary Jang picked up Sojin's phone. At exactly 10:33, the phone suddenly rang. Secretary Jang in October was talking to Secretary Jang in September. It turned out that at exactly 10:33, the time-traveling call was connected. Before Eri could say anything, Secretary Jang in September suddenly appeared behind her. When he saw Eri holding the phone, he immediately asked her what her relationship with Sojin was. When Secretary Jang saw that Eri did not answer, he immediately grabbed the phone. Unexpectedly, after that call, Secretary Jang in October started to have hallucinations. He panicked and threw away his phone. He couldn't believe that he had just talked to himself in the past. He went home and checked Eri's messages. He found that all of them were sent at 10:33. He suddenly realized that what Eri had said was true. Combined with the call just now, he was now completely enlightened. The secret of the time-traveling call was discovered by Secretary Jang. He came up with a daring idea of using September's Eri to save Hun-chae. The next day, police found the car that caused the accident in the suburbs. From the objects at the scene, Secretary Jang immediately recognized the driver's lighter. He immediately went to see the driver. When the two met, Secretary Jang beat the driver. The driver realized that Secretary Jang was mad, so he immediately revealed Hun-chae's entire plan. It turned out that 5 days ago, Hun-chae had secretly met the driver without letting Secretary Jang know. She had meticulously planned to hit and kill Sojin. First, she found a blind spot at the intersection, so there would be no witnesses. So why did Sojin stop at that intersection? It turned out that Hun-chae knew that Sojin often took sedatives. This type of drug has a side effect of causing drowsiness. When Sojin was driving halfway, Hun-chae told him to stop at the intersection to rest. Her plan was to wait for Sojin to fall asleep, and then she would lead Da-bin out of the car. Then the driver would hit Sojin straight on. But unexpectedly, Hun-chae and Da-bin did not get out of the car that day. Whether the driver was telling the truth or not, the incident had already happened. So, Secretary Jang took Sojin's phone and texted Eri. In the text message, he informed that on October 9th, Sojin and his wife and children had been in a car accident. Hun-chae and Da-bin had passed away. Secretary Jang hopes that Eri will definitely prevent this accident. He further explained that Sojin was currently seriously injured and unable to speak. During this time, he would send the necessary information via text message. If necessary, Eri could ask Secretary Jang for help, and she must kill the driver before October 9th. This text message made Eri suspicious. First, Sojin should have known that Secretary Jang was a bad person, so Sojin could not have told Eri to find Secretary Jang. Second, Sojin also knew that Eri could not go and kill someone. From then on, Eri confirmed that the person who sent the message was definitely not Sojin. That same night, Eri called Secretary Secretary Jang directly to expose Secretary Jang. This scared him and hung up. He then immediately deleted the text message history. The next morning, Secretary Jang came to Sojin's hospital room. Secretary Jang bent down and said that if Sojin did not intend to die, he should wake up quickly. Only when Sojin woke up would Hun-chae be saved. After saying that, Secretary Jang intended to leave. Unexpectedly, Sojin grabbed him. The nurse saw this and quickly called the doctor. Meanwhile, Secretary Jang was afraid of being exposed, so she secretly put the phone back to its original place. At the same time, the police discovered that in the bodies of Sojin, his wife and child, there were sleeping pills. This drug was identical to the sedative Sojin was using. Even more strangely, the analysis of the car's black box showed that before the car crashed, Sojin did not step on the brake but stepped on the gas. From then on, the police suspected that this was an accident intentionally created by Sojin. This absurd speculation turned Sojin from a victim to a perpetrator. The police also arranged for guards to be by his side day and night. This restricted his freedom. Reluctantly, Sojin woke up, but he still had to pretend to be in a coma. But unexpectedly, a nurse secretly gave him a piece of paper and lured the guards away. Jin crawled step by step to the parking lot. It turned out that everything was Secretary Jung's plan. Just like that, Sojin successfully escaped. When he returned to the apartment, Sojin suddenly lost his memory. He no longer remembered anything about the time-traveling cult. But Secretary Jang was worried because Ari in September did not listen to him. Only Sojin could convince her to help prevent the accident. To convince Sojin to believe in the time-traveling call, Secretary Jang told him all the information he knew. Although Sojin was still suspicious, he still called Ari to tell her that he would have an accident, and the culprit was the driver. Ari had to find a way to prevent the accident before October 9th. The next day, Secretary Jang asked the driver to go out. Sojin punched him. Then Sojin lifted the driver up by the neck. At this time, the driver realized that Sojin really wanted to kill him, so he confessed that it was all directed by Chairman Ju. So the final boss was finally revealed. It turned out that Hun-chae accidentally discovered that Chairman Ju was looking for Ari's mother. Hun-chae also knew that Chairman Ju had told the driver to transfer her 100 million won. So Hun-chae was sure that Ari's mother knew Chairman Ju's weakness. Hun-chae pretended to have evidence to blackmail him. Unexpectedly, Chairman Ju cruelly ordered the driver to deal with Hun-chae. So the driver followed Hun-chae's plan to harm Sojin. He crashed into their car before Hun-chae and Dubin could get out. Then he injected the three of them with anesthetic. Sojin asked the driver what secret Ari's mother was holding. The driver only knew that it was a recording. When Sojin learned the truth, his attitude towards Secretary Jang changed completely. It turned out that Sojin had remembered everything 3 days ago. He pretended to have amnesia just to get information from Secretary Jang. Only then could he find the driver. In September, Ari suddenly received news that her mother had fainted and had to be hospitalized. Ari hurriedly went to the hospital to visit her mother. However, when she printed out the medical records for her mother, she discovered that the records had been taken away yesterday. Ari immediately went to the monitoring room to check and discovered that the driver had taken the records. Even more surprising, when Ari looked up the driver's whereabouts, she saw Chairman Ju appearing in the video. Ari suddenly recalled her past memories. Her mother never mentioned her father's death. Her mother forbade her from contacting anyone related to the Juchung construction company. Only now did Ari understand everything. It turned out that the person her mother was avoiding was Chairman Ju. Sojin went to Ari's house in October to find the recording file. But unexpectedly, the police brought out a body, and that body was Ari. Ari had told her mother that she would die next month, but her mother absolutely did not believe it. But a month later, her mother actually saw her body. At 10:33, the time-traveling call was connected. Sojin informed Ari that she would be murdered on October 20th. After Ari heard the news, she was extremely confused. Ari had escaped death many times. She did not know when this would end. When Ari calmed down, she realized that everything started with Chairman Ju. As long as Ari got the documents from her mother, she could take down Chairman Ju. However, because Ari's mother was afraid of Chairman Ju's power, she was determined not to reveal where the documents were hidden. Ari told her that if someone asked about the documents a month later, she should tell everything she knew. With Gun Yukake's help, Sojin in October found Ari's mother. When he met her, he frankly said that he was collecting evidence of Chairman Ju's crimes, so he needed the audio file from her. However, Ari's mother just lost her daughter, so she is very heartbroken. She was in no mood to care about this. She remained silent. Seeing that, Sojin told her that she would understand everything in a minute. At 10:33 p.m., the time-traveling call was connected. Ari's mother heard Ari's voice again. The defenses in her heart immediately collapsed. Ari in September had told her that she had to trust Sojin, because only if Chairman Ju was overthrown could Ari's fate be changed. changed. Because Ari's mother was afraid that the evidence in her hands was not safe. 2 months ago she went to Jinho. She gave him all the evidence she had. The next morning, Ari's mother took Sojin to Jinho's house, but the house was in disarray. At this time, Sojin suddenly realized that Jinho had sent him a report from September, a report on the cause of the project collapse years ago. Because Sojin was worried that Jinho might be in danger, Sojin called him and told him to escape as soon as possible. However, at that time, Sojin only received paper documents without the audio file. Later, Ari's mother told the truth. It turned out that 19 years ago, after the construction site collapse, Sojin's father had met Ari's mother and said that Chairman Ju was primarily responsible for this case. The audio file was the key evidence he had collected. Sojin's father also said that before the truth was revealed, he would absolutely not do anything foolish. Only then did Sojin realize that his father's death contained many hidden secrets. Sure enough, in September, Sojin also realized that his father's death had problems. So, through police officer Park, Sojin found the old case file. Sojin discovered that the murderer had left an incomplete fingerprint at the scene. Because the technology at that time was limited, the police could not identify the murderer, but now the police have the technical qualifications, so they are re-examining. From there, the police discovered the real cause of Sojin's father's death. It turned out that years ago, before Sojin's father reported Chairman Ju's crimes, he had met the person in charge of investigating the construction collapse. Unexpectedly, after the two met, this person immediately pushed Sojin's father down the stairs. That person was the current police officer Chu Jang. Because the case happened so long ago, even with fingerprint evidence, it would be difficult to convict Chu Jang. At this moment, Sojin suddenly remembered that he had met Chu Jang in Chairman Ju's office. Thus, the real murderer who killed Sojin's father was most likely Chairman Ju. Sojin in September finally came to his senses. Sojin suddenly met Ari. When he saw the old watch on her hand, he was surprised to find that the clock had stopped at 10:33. At this time, the time-traveling call was connected. Sojin in October called his September self and said that it was currently October 23rd. If Sojin doesn't stop the accident before October 9th, his wife and daughter will both die. The culprit in both cases is the driver. As long as Sojin overthrows the mastermind, Chairman Ju, history can be changed. After ending the call, Sojin in September looks at the watch Ari gave him. At this moment, everything suddenly becomes clear. It turns out that 19 years ago, after the building collapsed, Ari's father was also buried in the rubble. He threw the only bottle of water to Sojin. Ari's father gave Sojin hope to live. The clock's hands forever stopped the moment Ari's father passed away. That was also the fateful moment 10:33. It was also this watch that connected Ari to Sojin. After that, Sojin and Ari made a plan. They found a room with a surveillance camera. Ari pretended to have her mother's documents to lure the driver to negotiate. Gun UK will provide cover outside. Sojin will stay at the police station. Once they have collected 10 pieces of evidence of the driver's crime, they will cooperate with the police to arrest him. However, they are still too inexperienced. The driver never acts according to their predictions. He brought people to kidnap Ari. Then he took her to a secret location. When Ari met President Ju, he discovered her scheme after only a few words. After President Ju found out that Ari did not have any documents in hand, he ordered the driver to find a place to deal with her. Seeing this, Gun UK immediately rushed in to stop him, but he only got hit a few times before he fainted. The driver quickly tied Ari up and drove away. By the time Sojin led the police team to the scene, they had already taken Ari away. At this time, October's Ari's mother suddenly received a phone call from Jinho. To ensure safety, he asked her to bring the documents to the hotel at night. Jinho then immediately informed Sojin to pick up the documents, but unexpectedly, Secretary Jang was too smart. To find Sojin, he followed Ari's friend, Su Chum. Secretary Jang then discovered Ari's mother's residence. At this time, he saw Sojin coming. When Sojin went upstairs, Secretary Jang immediately called police. At this moment, the door to Ari's mother's hospital room suddenly opened. When she turned around, a man in black rushed in and attacked her. Sojin rushed over but found the room empty. When Sojin saw the blood on the floor, he suddenly remembered the man in black he had just met when he got out of the elevator. Sojin immediately chased after him. Only then did Sojin realize that the elevator had stopped at the top floor. Sojin arrived in time, and the two immediately started fighting. However, Sojin was injured, so he was soon knocked down. At this moment, the police siren sounded. The man in black saw this and had to abandon his plan and leave in a hurry. The police also quickly arrived on the rooftop. Although Sojin had saved Ari's mother, he was arrested on suspicion of murder. Time returned to September, and the police used camera to find the driver's car going towards a highway intersection. However, car suddenly disappeared in the middle of the road. Perhaps it had gone into a road without surveillance cameras. At this moment, Sojin suddenly remembered that Ari had said that on October 9th the driver would cause an accident at an intersection without cameras. This proved that crime scene had been chosen by him in advance, so Sojin opened his phone to find that address. Meanwhile, the driver had carried Ari out of the car. He injected Ari with anesthetic and planned to use the car accident to kill her. But Sojin unexpectedly arrived quickly. When the driver saw that the situation was not good, he quickly drove away. The police chased closely behind. They finally caught the driver at an intersection. Then something strange happened. After the driver was caught, everything behind changed. History was rewritten. Sojin in October pushed open the door and saw Dabin. Everything was back to the starting point. Sojin happily ran to Ari's house, but he kept calling, but no one answered. Sojin hurriedly called Gunyu. Gunyu was informed that Ari's mother was still in the hospital. Ari was still murdered. Nothing about her had changed. Only then did Sojin understand that the one who killed Ari was not the driver. If Sojin couldn't take down Chairman Ju, all his efforts would be in vain. Sojin suddenly remembered that in his haste he forgot to take the documents that Jinho had sent. No one expected that Secretary Jang would enter the room and take the document bag on the table. When he opened it, he found that it was all documents about the old building collapse. Secretary Jang accidentally dropped the USB. He plugged it into the computer and opened the video. It turned out that although history had changed, Secretary Jang's memory was still intact. He suddenly remembered that the driver had shown him two passports. One passport belonged to Dabin, and the other belonged to Hun-chae. The driver also revealed Hun-chae's plan. Once she had tricked Chairman Ju and taken a large sum of money, she would abandon Secretary Jang. Then she would take her daughter abroad. So Secretary Jang went to Hun-chae. He threw the two passports in front of her. Hun-chae realized that her plan had been exposed, so she had to confess. When she was young, she burned her alcoholic stepfather alive. Hun-chae also lied that her stepfather forced her to run away with her daughter, but Secretary Jang blindly trusted Hun-chae. To avoid future trouble, Hun-chae then went to her stepfather's house. She deliberately broke the glass to make a noise. People outside heard the noise and came in to see. At this time, Hun-chae quickly went to the living room. She took the pill and put it in the wine bottle. Hun-chae secretly thought that when her stepfather was fast asleep, she would carry out the plan like 18 years ago. Hun-chae intended to set fire to her stepfather, but he saw through this little trick. He bent down and asked her what she was planning to do. He grabbed her hair. He cursed and threatened her, but she did not give in. She opened her mouth and bit his neck. This action made him mad. He smashed the wine bottle and hit her on the head. After that, he tied her up in the bathroom. While he was going to buy wine, Hun-chae hurriedly called Secretary Jang, but this scene was caught by her stepfather. He got drunk and poured gasoline on Hun-chae. Just then, Secretary Jang rushed over, beat him up, and strangled him. Only when he passed out did Secretary Jang let go. When Secretary Jang helped Hun-chae and was about to leave, he suddenly grabbed a knife and rushed from behind. The two struggled with the knife. Hun-chae saw this and was scared and ran away. Secretary Jang and Hun-chae's stepfather rushed into a fight and eventually both died. In September, Ari's mother suddenly received a phone call from Jinho. At this time, she knew that this document was extremely important to her daughter, so she told Jinho to give the document to Ari. Jinho immediately asked Ari to come to his house to get the document, but unexpectedly, that night, a mysterious person sneaked into Jinho's house. When Ari arrived, Jinho was lying motionless on the floor. It turned out that before, when Jinho was putting his daughter to sleep, she kept asking when she would recover. Jinho just tricked his daughter and put her to sleep. When she just lay down, there was a sudden knock on the door. When Jinho went out to check, he was attacked by a man dressed in black. Fortunately, Ari was nearby, so she texted Jinho to inform him that she was close and would be there soon. When the man in black saw the text, he quickly stopped and ran away. Thanks to that, Jinho was saved, but he was still seriously injured and in a coma. The attack on Jinho changed the history of October. Because Jinho was seriously injured and hospitalized, he could not deliver the documents to Ari's mother. All processes related to the documents and evidence were erased. At 10:33 p.m., the time-traveling call was connected. Sojin informed Ari that Secretary Jang was dead. He also informed Sojin that Jinho was attacked. Ari then received information about the murderer of Sojin's father. When she looked closely at the image, she realized that it was the man in black that she had seen near Jinho's house. Only then did Ari realize that it was Chairman Ju's subordinate. No matter how hard Sojin and Ari tried, if they didn't overthrow Chairman Ju, all their efforts would be in vain. Fortunately, Jinho's daughter told Ari that she had witnessed the murderer's actions. Thanks to the witness, the police arrested Chu Jang, but he had Chairman Ju protecting him, so he didn't show any fear. But unexpectedly, Jinho's daughter identified Chu Jang as the murderer. In the end, the police determined his crime, but whether it was the driver or Chu Jang, they were just just pawns in Chairman Ju's hands. If the police arrested one, another would replace him soon after. Only when Chairman Ju was overthrown would all the problems be completely resolved. Ari informed Sojin in September that Secretary Jang would die in a month because the history of Da Bin's kidnapping had changed. This meant that for Sojin in September, the kidnapping had never happened. At this time, Sojin of course did not know that Secretary Jang and Hun Che had a problem. However, the after effect of changing history is that when the time comes for the event to happen, memories will still naturally appear. On October 3rd, Sojin suddenly had a memory of Secretary Jang and Hun Che being at the resort together. That same night, Hun Che called to inform him of his travel plans. On October 9th, Sojin suddenly remembered the call to his future self. On October 9th, Sojin's whole family would have an accident. Therefore, he firmly refused Hun Che's plan. The next day, Sojin found Ari and asked about the cause of Secretary Jang's death. Ari had no choice but to say that Hun Che had a stepfather and Secretary Jang had died with him. The next day, Sojin met Secretary Jang. In order to keep Secretary Jang away from Hun Che, Sojin told him the whole truth. Sojin also threatened that if Secretary Jang did not leave immediately, he would be killed by Hun Che's stepfather. While Secretary Jang was driving, painful memories suddenly appeared in his mind. It was as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. It turned out that today was October 9th, the time when Sojin's family had an accident. Secretary Jang suddenly remembered everything. He hurriedly ran to the prison to meet the driver. Secretary Jang wanted to know what Hun Che had hidden from him. Following the driver's clue, Secretary Jang found 2 passports in the car and confirmed that Hun Che had planned to betray him for a long time. At the same time, because Jinho's daughter's toys were left at home, Ari went to Jinho's house to look for them. There, she accidentally discovered a receipt for keeping things. At this time, Ari guessed that the kept things must be evidence documents. She followed the address on the receipt to find the storage counter. There was indeed a USB in the items that were left, but the staff said that Jinho had retrieved it on September 25th. That was 2 days before he was attacked. At 10:33 p.m. on November 14th, Ari informed Sojin that the evidence could only be found when Jinho woke up. Ari sent Sojin a photo of the document and a USB. Since Ari's death was approaching, if the two of them did not act quickly, her fate would not be changed. Sojin decided to carry out a desperate plan. Sojin from October 15th and Sojin from November 15th acted together. They went to Chairman Ju at 3:30 p.m. Sojin from October told Chairman Ju that he knew his father did not do anything stupid. His father was killed by Chairman Ju. Sojin from November declared that what Chairman Ju was looking for was in his hands. The building collapse 19 years ago was not a simple accident. It was actually a conspiracy. It was Chairman Ju who planted the explosives to collapse the building. However, Chairman Ju did not believe that Sojin had the evidence, so he immediately sent Sojin away. At this time, Sojin in October received a phone call from Ari. She pretended to inform him that she had found the evidence. Sojin deliberately let Chairman Ju stand next to him and hear clearly. This would definitely make him suspicious. Chairman Ju immediately believed that the evidence was in Sojin's hands. Chairman Ju suddenly asked Sojin what he wanted. Sojin showed a photo and made an appointment to meet Chairman Ju alone tonight to discuss it in detail. At 10:30 p.m. in an abandoned building, Sojin and Chairman Ju faced each other tensely. Sojin told Chairman Ju that what he was doing was the same as what his father had done. As a victim of the building collapse, Sojin asked Chairman Ju if he had intentionally planted the explosives to destroy the building. Chairman Ju frankly admitted that he did it. Then he falsified documents to blame another company and then took over the company. Chairman Ju believed that the strong are the winners. Chairman Ju forced Sojin to hand over the documents, but unexpectedly, Sojin took out his voice recorder and said that he had no evidence. This voice recording was the evidence that accused Chairman Ju of murder. Sojin was immediately thrown down the stairs. The conversation between him and Chairman Ju ended exactly at 10:33. The whole incident was recorded by Ari on her phone. Sojin's reckless behavior was really shocking. Sojin opened the voice recording in October to check it carefully. He intended to bring it to the police station as evidence to overthrow Chairman Ju, but the event had not happened yet, so the police would not believe it. Ari and Sojin were forced to come up with a new plan. Even though Secretary Jang knew that Hun Che had betrayed him, he still rushed to her stepfather's house. The two fought to the point of death. Sojin found Ari's mother in October. She agreed to help them find evidence. At that time, Sojin received news from Police Park that the driver had been released on bail yesterday. This forced the two to speed up their plan. Sojin went to Chairman Ju again and claimed that the evidence documents were in his hands. Unexpectedly, Chairman showed him a photo of the documents on a USB. It turned out out that after the driver was released from prison, he had investigated Irie's whereabouts. The driver discovered that the item Jinho had kept had not fallen into anyone's hands. The driver even went to the hospital to threaten Jinho. At that moment, the phone rang. Irie's mother claimed that the item was with her. If Chairman Ju wanted it, he had to listen to her. So Chairman Ju agreed to meet Sojin privately. The two faced each other at the same place. Sojin went straight to the point that he didn't have the documents. Chairman Ju got angry and wanted to kill Sojin. Suddenly, the police arrived and arrested Chairman Ju. The driver saw that the situation was not good and quickly ran away. When Irie heard that Jinho had woken up, she quickly went to the hospital. When Jinho was about to reveal the location of the documents, the driver stabbed him. At Chairman Ju's trial, Sojin submitted a prepared recording to the police. However, Chairman Ju denied that it was his words. The lawyer also discovered that the recording was on October 15th, and he gave Chairman Ju's alibi for that day. The court was in a passive position. At the crucial moment, the witness summoned by the prosecutor appeared. Irie led Jinho in with the documents. It turned out that she had just used a stun gun to subdue the driver, and the police had promptly arrested him. Thanks to that, Jinho was able to confidently reveal the location of the documents' hiding place. The video evidence that had been buried for 19 years was finally exposed. It turned out that on the night before the construction collapsed, Chairman Ju secretly sent someone to transport a truck of explosives to the construction site. He intentionally caused the collapse to blame the construction company. After the accident, Chairman Ju bought the company's shares at a cheap price. He sacrificed 68 lives to satisfy his ambition. After the incident, Sojin's father discovered something unusual, so he talked to Chairman Ju and secretly recorded a video as evidence. In the end, Chairman Ju was sentenced to life in prison. After the trial, Jinho also came to his senses. He admitted that he had kidnapped Da Bin with Hun Che and Secretary Jang. Hun Che was arrested. Secretary Jang suffered a tragic end. After that, Sojin and Erin returned to their peaceful lives. They no longer had to wait until 10:33 every day. Today's movie ends here. See you again in the next videos.